Across the planet, people have built homes in ways so unusual that they seem almost impossible. Communities packed onto tiny islands, covering nearly every inch of land. Floating houses in the middle of lakes, where both the roofs and the platforms beneath them are made from reeds. And rooms carved directly into massive rock formations, with windows and balconies protruding from the mountainside. Yet these are not abandoned structures. People still live inside them every day. Generation after generation, they continue to call these extraordinary places home. And nowhere is this more evident than in a floating village in the wetlands of Ghana. Home to a community so unique that it is hard to believe it belongs to this world. In the middle of Lake Tadane in Ghana, Nzulezo appears as a strip of houses rising directly above the water. The entire settlement is supported by wooden stilts driven deep into the lake bed. Metal roofs, wooden walls, and homes are connected by narrow plank walkways. Beneath the floors, there is no solid ground, only water flowing between hundreds of support posts. To enter or leave the village, residents must paddle canoes through channels cutting across the forest. Here, boats are as common as cars are elsewhere. But Nzulezo is not a settlement forgotten by time. Children run across wooden walkways. Families cook outside their homes, and small shops continue to provide everyday necessities. Every part of daily life takes place directly above the lake. The strangest thing is not any individual house, but the fact that an entire community continues to live, work, and grow in a place where streets and solid ground barely exist. On the surface, Coober Pedy looks like a landscape that has been drilled apart, with countless mine shafts and pale mounds of earth scattered across the red desert. But the most unbelievable sight is hidden behind small doors leading underground. As you pass through rough tunnels carved directly into the rock, an entire world begins to appear. Kitchens have refrigerators and ovens. Living rooms are fully furnished. Bedrooms glow beneath low stone ceilings. Deeper inside, there are galleries, churches, halls, and even areas recreating an old post office and opal mine. These homes are known as dugouts. They were built deep beneath the rock to escape the intense desert heat. From tunnels originally created for mining, residents have developed fully equipped living spaces and continue to use them every day. Part of the San Bernardo archipelago off Colombia's Caribbean coast, Santa Cruz del Islote initially appears as nothing more than a tiny dot in the vast blue sea. From above, metal roofs, brick walls, and low-rise homes cover nearly every inch of land. There are almost no long, sandy beaches or significant open spaces left. Boats are anchored directly beside waterfront homes, floating on water so clear that the seafloor is visible below. Deeper inside is a maze of narrow passageways winding between rows of colorful houses. Every small courtyard is used for daily activities. Despite being isolated in the middle of the ocean, life here is never quiet. Adults talk outside their homes, children play along the walkways, and gatherings often take place in the middle of the crowded neighborhood. At Santa Cruz del Islote, homes, streets, and coastline are compressed into an extremely small area. The result is a neighborhood standing out in the middle of the ocean, with a rhythm of life that few other communities could recreate. Located in Catalonia's Garrocha volcanic region, Castellfollit de la Roca is built along a basalt ridge approximately 50 meters high. From a distance, you can see rows of red-tiled roofs forming a narrow strip between the green forest, with two rivers winding below the steep cliffs. At the tip of the ridge, the Church of San Salvador and its old bell tower stand directly beside the drop. Behind them, stone houses are packed onto ground that becomes increasingly narrow. Once inside, the streets become small and winding. Pathways pass between old walls, iron balconies, and multi-story homes. Passing vehicles, open windows, potted plants outside doorways, and visitors gathering in the square show that this is not a place frozen in time. Only when you stand at the viewpoint at the end of the street and look down into the valley do you suddenly realize just how closely the entire community clings to the edge of the cliff. The cone-shaped rock formations clustered tightly on the slopes of Kandovan look more like giant beehives than human homes. On the grayish-brown rock surface, doors, windows, and balconies appear at various heights. Most of the living spaces are carved directly into the volcanic rock. Some blocks contain multiple floors, connected to the village paths by stairs, stone steps, and steep walkways hugging the mountainside. As you walk through the narrow roads, you will see stone houses mixed with brick walls, awnings, and small shops. Clothes hang out to dry on balconies, power lines run across the cliff face, and cars park right at the base of the rocks. Inside, rough walls surround bedrooms, kitchens, and storage areas. The thick rock layer helps insulate the space somewhat from the harsh weather outside. Kandovan creates the feeling that the entire mountain has been turned into a residential area. Every door on the cliff face shows that these seemingly perfectly natural formations are still being used as homes every single day. From the flatlands of the Hadramaut Valley, rows of earth-colored buildings suddenly rise straight up in the middle of the desert. They stand closely together behind a city wall, creating a skyline that looks like a high-rise city molded entirely out of mud. The houses in Shibam are built from sun-dried mud bricks. Many structures reach several stories high, with wide bases, tapering walls, and rows of small windows running up near the roof. Through the city gates, these towers block out most of the sky above the narrow streets. Light filters down between the tall walls, while turns in the road constantly open up to small courtyards and squares. Looking closer, the building's surfaces bear all the marks of the desert climate. There are patches of wall freshly coated with new earth, while other parts are darkened, slightly cracked, or eroded around the windows. Because of this, Shibam proves that a metropolis could grow vertically long before steel, glass, and concrete defined modern cities. Walking down the stone steps of Matera, you will find it hard to tell what is a roof, what is a street, and what is the original rock face. The cream-colored structures stack on top of each other, spilling from the edge of the plateau all the way down to the deep ravine below. Many stone facades are actually just the outer layer of rooms carved deep into the limestone. The roof of a house below might become a courtyard, a walkway, or the foundation for a structure built higher up. Cobblestone alleys wind through archways, stairs, and small courtyards. Some sections open up to wide views of the valley, but just a few steps later, they narrow between two old walls. Heading deeper into the Sassi districts, you will come across doors, shops, restaurants, and lodgings, located right inside rocky alcoves. The lights inside contrast sharply with the rough stone surfaces out on the street. The entire neighborhood looks as if it was formed by digging down into the terrain rather than building up from it. In Matera, the boundaries between cave, house, and street are practically blended together on the very same mountainside. The ground beneath the feet of the Uros people is not rock, sand, or concrete. It is made of multiple layers of totora reeds stacked thickly on the surface of Lake Titicaca, creating golden-colored floating islands in the middle of the deep blue water. Homes, canopies, and traditional boats are also woven from the exact same reeds. From above, each island looks like a massive raft, topped with small houses sitting around a communal courtyard. As you walk across the island's surface, the dry reeds shift slightly underfoot. The walkways have no clear boundaries. Residents simply move through the open spaces between houses, watchtowers, and boat tie-up areas. Around the edges of the island, reed boats sit side by side with motorboats. Adults fix handicrafts, prep boats, or welcome guests, while kids play right on the layer of material that keeps the entire settlement floating above the water. The old reed layers gradually rot away, so fresh material must constantly be added to the surface. Because of this, Uros is like a home that is constantly being rebuilt right beneath the feet of the people living on it. A dense patch of tin roofs appears in the middle of Lake Victoria, almost completely hiding the small rocky outcrop underneath. Seen from above, Migingo looks more like a tightly compressed floating market than a typical island. Homes and makeshift structures are pieced closely together using wood, corrugated metal, and material scraps of all sizes. Between them are only small, zigzagging walkways, sometimes just wide enough for one person to squeeze through. Along the island's shore, fishing boats are parked in multiple rows. Nets, containers, and tools are placed right at the water's edge, making the boundary between the residential area and the boat dock almost disappear. Life here revolves around the fishing trade. From early morning, boats leave the island for the lake. When they return, fish are moved through the narrow streets to places for weighing, trading, or storage. Almost every inch of the surface serves a purpose, from sleeping quarters and trading spots to boat mooring locations. It is the fishing activity on the lake that has transformed Migingo from a barren rock into a settlement packed with roofs and passers-by. From the mainland, Monemvasia is almost completely hidden behind a massive rock jutting straight up from the Aegean Sea. Only when you cross the narrow bridge connecting it to the shore do the red tile roofs and rows of stone houses slowly appear behind the cliff face. Inside the city gates, cars disappear. Cobblestone streets wind past low houses, archways, stairs, and walkways just wide enough for pedestrians. Many facades are built right against the rock face, while balconies look straight down into the blue sea below. The deeper you go, the more the neighborhood opens up into small squares, shops, eateries, and homes that are still in use. Clothes hang outside windows, tables and chairs are set right up against the walkways, and residents navigate alleys that were originally designed as part of a fortress. Monemvasia makes the whole town seem to vanish from the outside world. Behind that seemingly barren rock remains a complete neighborhood where people continue to live their lives among the fortress walls, the cliffs, and the sea. Some roads simply take you from one place to another, but Ruta 40 takes you through the very heart of Argentina. The journey begins across wide open plains. Then the scenery keeps changing. Dry deserts, ice blue lakes, snow-covered peaks of the Andes, Every day feels like a completely different world. The road stretches across remote landscapes, where the strong Patagonian wind sweeps across the pavement, and hundreds of kilometers pass with nothing but nature around you. From above, the contrast becomes stark. Roofs, the lake, and rows of palm trees are besieged by layers of golden sand constantly shifting shape in the wind. Down on the ground, tourists and locals stroll along the lakefront. Dune buggies speed through exits to the desert. And daily life still takes place in a very confined space. Huacachina is like a patch of urban life clinging to the sole water source in a sea of sand. Every single house here sits right on the boundary where the greenery ends and the desert begins. There are no airports, highways, or neighboring cities leading to Tristan da Cunha. After days of traveling by ship through the South Atlantic, the very first thing to appear is a cloud-covered volcano rising straight out of the dark sea. The main settlement sits on a relatively flat strip of land at the base of the mountain. Low-roofed houses are lined up along a few roads, surrounded by pastures, potato patches, and stone walls running across the island's slopes. Walking through the settlement, you will encounter homes, a church, shops, and community buildings separated by wide patches of open land. Behind the roofs are high cliffs. In front is a rocky shoreline where huge waves constantly crash against the edge of the island. Despite being cut off from the rest of the world by thousands of miles of ocean, a community still lives here year-round. Tristan da Cunha turns isolation into a permanent part of life, where every road ends at a mountain, a pasture, or the deep sea. A cluster of grass-roofed houses sits scattered across a green valley, with a sheer cliff dropping straight into the North Atlantic Ocean. Right in front, just below the settlement, water from the Monemvasia waterfall plunges off the mountain edge and vanishes into the foaming waves. The houses in Gásadalur are built along small roads running through the meadows. Dark roofs, wooden walls, and low structures make the village almost blend into the terrain whenever low clouds roll over the mountainside. From the pathways around the village, you can see sheep grazing near fences, cars parked outside homes, and locals moving between narrow yards. On the outer edge, the road leads to an observation point, where all the roofs, the waterfall, and the coastline fit perfectly into a single frame. Gásadalur exists on a slice of land surrounded by high mountains and sea cliffs. The homes here seem to cling to the very last flat piece of land before the ground suddenly vanishes into the ocean. Looking up from the sea level, the light-colored rows of houses in Bonifacio appear right on the edge of the white limestone cliffs. Some structures sit so close to the edge that their lower walls seem to drop straight down into the rock layers, hollowed out by the waves. Above the cliffs is the old town, featuring tall houses, narrow facades, and windows stacked closely together. Cobblestone alleys run through archways, staircases, and sections of road that unexpectedly open up to views of the harbour or the blue waters below. Within the neighbourhood, eateries, shops, and homes share the same small walkways. Locals open their windows right above the street, motorcycles are parked in tight spaces, and daily life goes on just a few blocks away from the cliff edge. From offshore, Bonifacio looks like an urban wall placed on top of a rock. The distance between where people live and the sea abyss below is so thin that the cliff itself becomes the most noticeable foundation of the entire city. A deep gorge cuts straight through the center of Ronda, splitting the settlement into two halves, resting on near-vertical cliffs. In the middle of that gap, the Puente Nuevo Bridge rises from the bottom of the canyon, connecting the rows of white houses on either side. Along the edge of the abyss, homes, hotels, and balconies are built flush against the high stone walls. In some places, the back of a building faces straight down into the Guadalquivir River, while the front still opens up to streets bustling with passers-by. Heading deep into the old town, you will encounter cobblestone walkways, small squares, and alleys winding between whitewashed walls. Just by turning a corner, the sheer drop of the gorge suddenly reappears. Life in Ronda takes place right on two opposing cliff edges. Because of this, the bridge in the middle acts like a giant stretch of street, keeping the entire city from being split in half by the deep ravine below. At one time, Atule'er Village was almost completely cut off from the outside world. Steep cliffs of the Taihang Mountains surrounded the village, and the only way in or out was a narrow stone path along the mountain side. Instead of leaving their home, the villagers decided to change the mountain itself. In 1972, they began carving a tunnel through solid rock using hammers, chisels, and explosives. After years of hard work, Atule'er Tunnel passed through the mountain. Many paths are only just wide enough for people and carts to pass through. Low wooden doors open into inner courtyards, while virtually windowless walls conceal the daily life happening behind them. At the edge of the settlement, sand piles up in layers against rooftops and gets pushed deeper by the wind after every storm. Locals have to constantly clear the roads, reinforce walls, or build higher up to keep their living spaces from being buried. Chinguetti exists in a slow tug-of-war with the desert. Every walkway cleared out today could become a place where the sand returns tomorrow. The road leading to Supai does not end at a parking lot. From the rim of the Grand Canyon, the journey continues via a long trail cutting through the red cliffs before the first roofs appear at the bottom of Havasu Canyon. The settlement sits on a relatively flat piece of land, surrounded by towering sandstone walls. Wooden houses, fenced yards, and low structures line the dirt roads, where residents get around by walking, horseback riding, or using village utility vehicles. But when the road ends, the journey is not over. Visitors continue on foot, walking through pine forests and mountain trails, getting closer to one of Pakistan's most famous landscapes. Then the view suddenly opens up. Wide green meadows spread out beneath the snow-covered peak of Nanga Parbat. Creating a peaceful scene that feels worlds away from the tense drive. On the other side of the road waits a place where the beauty of the Himalayas makes every dangerous turn along the journey worth it. On the black lava fields in Kalapana, many sections of old roads vanish beneath layers of hardened volcanic rock. Amidst that rugged surface, a few new rooftops appear, scattered like tiny dots across a landscape that was once flattened by red-hot lava flows. The entrance to the residential areas crosses cracked lava beds, where there is practically no soft soil or large trees left. A few houses stand all alone, connected by temporary roads, utility poles, and yards created directly on top of the basalt rock. Walking around the area, you might spot young shrubs sprouting from rock crevices. Sections of old roads ending abruptly, and traces of houses that once stood here. In the distance, the slopes of Kilauea still dominate the horizon. Many homes in Kalapana were buried by lava starting in 1990. But some residents later returned to build on the very surface of the volcano. If you want to reach the old village of Atule'er, you have to look up a near-vertical, towering cliff. The houses sit on the flat summit, separated from the valley below by sheer rock faces and a steel ladder system clinging to the side of the cliff. From the foot of the mountain, the ladder appears as a thin line running through the rock. Bridge sections, metal steps, and resting platforms follow one after another, while the void below grows wider and wider with every step you climb. At the top, low-slung houses once sat scattered among farm fields, dirt trails, and dry mountain slopes. All materials, goods, and daily necessities meant to arrive here had to make it up that exact same vertical path. But the pace of life in Atule'er has changed. In 2020, hundreds of residents from impoverished households were relocated down to a new housing complex in Zhaojue County, meaning the cliffside village is no longer the bustling community from the images that once captured the world's attention. On the vast savannas of Tanzania, a circular fence made of dry branches is often the first sign that a Maasai village lies ahead. Inside that fence layer, low houses are arranged in a circle around a central courtyard meant for livestock. The walls of the homes are made from a wooden frame and then covered with a mix of mud and local materials. Low roofs, small doorways, and virtually no large windows make each hut look like a dark mound of earth rising from the prairie. As you walk through the village, you will see dirt paths running between the homes, fences, and cattle enclosures. Kids play near the central yard, adults fix roofs, prepare food, or lead their herds out to the pasture. The layout of the entire settlement revolves around protecting people and their livestock within a single, enclosed ring. Therefore, seen from above, a Maasai village looks like one single structure built in the middle of an open expanse, where every single home faces inward toward the shared rhythm of life in the center. The cog railway climbs out of the town of Sankt Wolfgang and constantly winds through forests, meadows, and increasingly steep mountain slopes. By the time the train reaches Schafbergspitze, the summit structures finally appear right on the edge of a high cliff. The train station and hotel sit on a narrow strip of land at an elevation of nearly 1,800 meters. One side opens up to a drop toward the Blue Lakes, resting deep in the valley. The other side is a sharply dropping mountain slope, with trails running right along the ridge. Around the summit area, tourists walk between the platform, restaurant, hotel, and observation points. Staff still work inside these buildings that seem completely severed from all the settlements below. While the train continues to bring people and supplies up the nearly 6-kilometer-long route. Schafbergspitze creates a scene where architecture stops at the exact boundary of the mountain abyss. From the hotel windows, the ground practically vanishes, making way for clouds, lakes, and an endless array of mountain peaks stretching around the horizon. From the bottom of the Paro Valley, Paro Taktsang appears only as a small cluster of white walls clinging to the dark cliff face. The complex sits at an altitude of over 3,100 meters, resting on a rocky ledge about 900 meters above the valley below. To access this place, One must hike through pine forests, follow steep trails, and then head down stone steps carved into the mountainside. On the final stretch, the path wraps around a waterfall before leading to the monastery gates. Inside are shrines, hallways, staircases, and rooms meant for religious activities. The white walls, red roofs, and gilded details stand so close to the natural rock that some parts seem to grow straight out of the cliff. Monks and pilgrims still use Paro Taktsang as a religious site. Every single trip in and out has to take the very same mountain route. Allowing this complex to remain active in a place where just setting foot at the door is already a long journey. A narrow stone pillar rises up amidst a sea of clouds at Fanjingshan, its summit split into two opposing peaks. Sitting atop each peak is a small temple connected to each other by a stone bridge hovering right over the deep void. To climb up to the Red Cloud's golden summit, you have to conquer a series of near-vertical stairs. Handrails hug the rock face. The path narrows between mountain walls, and the final sections wrap around the boulder before reaching the temple gates. From the top, the tile roofs and building walls take up only a tiny fraction of the massive terrain. Below is a primeval forest, metamorphic rock formations, and layers of clouds that constantly shroud and then reveal the entire mountainside. Fanjingshan was recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in 2018. The two temples turn a seemingly inaccessible rocky spire into a space where people still set foot every day. Here, the bridge between the two peaks acts as the only path connecting structures sitting isolated high up in the sky. The most incredible part about Abuna Yemata Guh is that from the foot of the mountain, it is practically impossible to see any building at all. The church is carved into a high sandstone cliff above the Tigray Plains, with its entrance hidden behind sheer rock formations. The journey starts on a dry trail, then transitions into a direct climb up the rock face. Climbers have to grip tiny crevices, navigate over narrow ledges, and keep hugging the cliff before reaching the door. Past the low entrance is a space set deep inside the stone, where the ceiling and walls still retain their religious paintings. Light from the cave entrance shines into the room, while outside is a wide open drop down to the fields below. Abuna Yemata Guh is still used as a church, but not as a residential home for a community. What makes this structure so extraordinary is the fact that every service, visit, and item brought inside must conquer the exact same cliff-hanging route. In the middle of the Gobi Desert, where the horizon can stretch on without a single town in sight, round white tents sometimes appear next to a herd of livestock. That is a gyer, a type of portable home used by many nomadic herding families in Mongolia. Each one has a wooden frame arranged in a circle, covered on the outside with layers of insulating material and canvas. A chimney pokes out from the center of the roof, while the front door usually faces the exact same direction to block the strong winds sweeping across the plains. Inside, beds, cabinets, a stove and utensils are arranged around one single living space. Right outside the door are motorcycles, solar panels, makeshift pens, and herds of goats, sheep, or camels roaming across the vast dry land. Some families combine a traditional grazing lifestyle with modern amenities like cell phones and solar power. These homes can be taken apart whenever the water source or pasture changes. Because of this, out in the Gobi, a home does not pin people down to a fixed spot on the map. It moves along with the family across the very desert that dictates how they live. From houses floating in the middle of a lake and neighborhoods clinging to cliff sides, to tents migrating across a desert, every destination we have just explored proves the extraordinary adaptability of humankind. Which place impressed you the most, and would you be willing to live there, even just once in your life? Share your choices and thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to keep joining us on journeys to explore the strangest lands in the world. See you next time.